Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. And today, I think Darren Loli, our guest, kind of hits the category on all of those. He's doing some very interesting and fun things, hitting basically all of those fields. So welcome to the show, Darren.
Good morning, Dennis. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm doing quite well, although I'm only about halfway through my first cup of coffee. So hopefully we'll keep the energy level up here. Darren, now, I know just a little bit about you, but for our audience out there, both our viewers and our listeners, I always like to start with just a little bit of your professional background so people can get a little bit of kind of context as we build into what you're doing today. Would you like to start off and share a little bit about your background?
Sure. My educational background is in business management, communications, and film. I really couldn't decide what I wanted to do when I was in college. So I did a little bit of everything that I enjoyed doing. Professionally, I'm an operations consultant with a specialization in new division and turnaround management. I've worked in a variety of different industries: healthcare, nutrition, franchising, oil, aviation, even Bose audio. My passion project was a foray into LGBTQ that turned into Happening Out television network, which started out as It's Happening Out, which is our roundtable coffee talk discussion show. And from there, we expanded to news, which is Queer News Tonight. And after that, we did Gay Town Hall, which is a town hall type conversational show. And we've recently partnered, a year ago, 2 weeks before pandemic, we partnered with Sunshine Cathedral to help broadcast the largest queer church service broadcast in the world, with over 30,000 people watching live. So that's kind of my background, and that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Oh, well, very interesting. So from business turnaround and consulting, so was the kind of the media format and getting into the LGBT, is that, how did that fit? What was the kind of spark that made you, one day go, oh, I think I want to start a, YouTube and live stream feed and doing this, kind of what was going on, in your world, or, what kind of gave you that idea and spark?
Well, I was living in an era where you could be in a gay bar and you could be talking to somebody, and there would be these hot button issues that would be an immediate shutdown, right? And I'm not even talking about, oh, I think somebody's cute and I'm going to go flirt with him. I'm talking about you're just sitting and you're having a conversation with somebody, and for LGBTQ, the conversation was an instant shutdown. One example would be religion, right? Religion has caused so much harm to LGBTQ community that it's often something that people don't even want to talk about. And so the idea of an open conversation, a safe space type platform where people where LGBTQ could sit down and talk about things that were important to them was always something that's been, has always been something that's been on my mind to do. In business, as well as in personal life, I found that one of my biggest success strategies is surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me, more creative than me, and creating loyal relationships, so relationship building. And so when I encountered now a very good friend of mine, at the time I had just met him, Al, and we were talking about this frustration that I had, and his creative spark of saying, well, I know a couple people that we can sit down in front of a camera to do this. And my engineering background of being able to set the system up we worked together and we started it. And it started out with 5 core hosts, and it has grown now to 8 core hosts, and we've had over 60 special guests. So that's how that got sparked. And then from there, it kind of morphed into more.
Okay. And now, did that start off always as a live stream with recordings, available after the fact, or was it, kind of like what I do? I record and I do, post-production and let them all out, kind of in order. Just out of curiosity, was it always kind of a live stream, or did you guys kind of grow into that?
Yeah, so around 2.5 years ago, it started off as live stream. When we started the show, the craze was live. Facebook Live has just started becoming popular. Snapchat was just entering the market, or at least penetrating the market and becoming popular. And so we knew that from a marketing perspective, live was going to be very important. So from the very beginning, our first broadcast was live, with a few hiccups. But from the very beginning, it was live. And then because of the way that YouTube and Facebook, because of the way that they're platformed, everything was available on demand afterwards, of course. But the majority of our viewers, especially in the beginning, they were live. Watching live, yeah.
Cool beans. And now, again, so sorry, I've only had a half a cup of coffee. So that started all about a year ago?
About 2 years ago. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary last November.
Okay, so in November 2019, is it around
18?
2018. Okay, yeah. Again, only half a cup of coffee. Math and brain, too. Come on, Dennis.
Got it.
So okay, because of course someone can watch this at any point in the future, and so folks can find you at the happeningout.com.
Happeningout.com, yes.
And of course, search for you on YouTube,
Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the major platforms.
Okay, super. And so you have gone through some format in different show and format and so forth. So from your kind of like the View or the Talk with the several hosts, 6 to 7 or so hosts, all kind of giving points of view on things, to your next show, I believe, was the Daily News. And that is so that's like going from a 1-week thing to an everyday thing. Wow. That is a commitment.
Right. So increase in efficiencies. My background is operations. So when we first started It's Happening Out, which is the talk show, it took a week. It took 40 hours to produce and manufacture that show. As we progressed, we increased our efficiency. And so it wasn't just, and I'll talk a little bit about how the concept for the news started, but it wasn't just that that concept started formulating in the office, but also that we were becoming more efficient with the talk show. And so we had additional man hours that we could contribute to other projects. And so when the idea of, when we started to realize internally that there was a president in office who was consuming a lot of our conversational time on the show, and it occurred to us that that we were becoming a little bit too newsy on a coffee table talk show, and that perhaps we should explore what it would look like if we created a separate show that was exclusively dedicated to news. And that, coupled with our increased efficiency and now the availability of our human resources to be able to manufacture a news show, is really what sparked the concept. Then it went to creative to try and understand what format would work best, and how we could do it differently than what other people have been doing.
Okay. Doing it different than other people have been doing, though, is there's not really other LGBT news shows. Is there or have there been? I'm not aware of any.
Well, no, there hasn't. I think the closest you could say, which is no longer a program, but we joke about it in the office, was the Naked News, right? That's about as close as you got. But really, if you were to think of perceived competitors for us, it would be the Washington Blade, Pink News, but none of them do. Live broadcast news in the way that we do. None of them give you the news in a format that you can digest while you're driving to work, or that you can sit at home, turn on the news, and just listen to and watch. And we incorporate news partners. We partner with a variety of larger news channels, CNN, NBC, to give us some of their video packages. And so we integrate their reporting, and we report on the LGBTQ perspective of the news at large.
Oh, okay. Nice to hear that you're partnered with, some of the large, well-respected news sources out there. So neat. So in addition to the Anderson Cooper and the Lemon on the CNN, who they don't get to necessarily do the gay view, right? Because they're on a standard format. And there's, I can't think of his name right now, but he's one of the first out newscasters. He lives in Atlanta. Super cute. But anywho, he's mainstream news. So even though there might be LGBT people really in the news world, they're not always really being able to give that LGBTQ perspective, because they're speaking to a general audience. They've got the huge corporation that, has them on a leash, dragging them around like, a pup. And so yeah, I'm thinking like Rachel Maddow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Famously lesbian, out on MSNBC, I believe it is. But, although everyone knows she's lesbian, just like everyone knows, that incredibly adorable Anderson Cooper is gay, they might be able to throw something in there now and then. But it's not that consistent voice from the LGBT community. So very neat. And you bring up a good point. Yes, it is video format, but just like OutBüro Voices on 14 podcasting apps, even if you're viewing your listening to your news while on the go, you can always, throw on YouTube and stream it. Hopefully you've got a stereo in your vehicle that can, stream that audio so that you can still listen in while you're driving.
Yes, over 30% of our viewers are listening to the different news programming.
Okay,
which is interesting. That's a new metric that YouTube started including in their analytics about the middle of last year, and so it's been really interesting to understand how people are consuming the product. And we start making modifications based on those metrics. So yes, you can watch it and you can listen to it.
Sure. And of course, there's all the podcasting apps that could possibly be streamed to in the future. But yeah, boy, yeah, and luckily, how many people are kind of working on, in whatever capacity, paid, volunteered, slave labor, whatever it might be. But how many people, because I know it's more than just you and Al. I'm aware of David, ran into him numerous times over in and around Fort Lauderdale. And so, if just off the top of my head, I can count about 10 people. But about how many people are involved in happening out and making this all come to life?
It's a little less than that. It's 7 people.
7.
We have
okay.
Yeah, we have director, creative, content, and then talent, then in-house talent. And then when we talk about LGBTQ perspective, it's really important to us that we not pigeonhole that into one type of perspective. And so through the evolution of Queer News Tonight, as we started adding not just the LGBTQ slant to the story, but we also started adding perspective, we realized that we needed to diversify our anchors so that the perspective that we were providing was coming from the Black community, from the Black LGBTQ community, from the transgender community, from LGBTQ and even allies in some cases, so we can get their perspective as well. So it's LGBTQ perspective that we're adding to the news, but we try and make it the entire gamut of the LGBTQ spectrum.
Understand. And you know, and that's very commendable to make sure that you put that in there and bring and reach out and bring, you know, people on, you know, like even in the future, you know, periodical, you know, guest anchors, guest spots or something like that just keeps it fresh, you know, keeps it fresh and interesting. So having consistency while mixing it up.
Yeah, precisely.
And part of that too is getting to your town hall. Now that's a lot of mixing up. That's a lot of people to wrangle.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about how that came to be and what that focus is.
So that came from realizing that the talk show was super interesting, and that we were finding a lot of unique conversation going on there. But a lot of the comments that were coming in on the shows were shedding a lot of, were exposing us to a significantly larger perspective and commentary. And so we decided that we wanted to test something out where we would have more than just 6 people on the show, just to see what it was like. And out of that came Gay Town Hall. And that was where the idea is that we can have an unlimited number of participants, and that we would then include the people who were watching, you know, who were too shy to be on the show per se, or to have their face on camera, but were willing to contribute in the comment stream. And so we folded them into the conversation, and we have somebody on that show that's dedicated to bringing the comments into the show and folding them into the conversation. And that's how the Gay Town Hall started. And out of that came the uber controversial LGBTQ presidential town hall that we hosted that had over 500,000 views, where we hosted #walkaway and 3 of their panelists to debate 3 of our panelists to help get the LGBTQ community to go out and vote before the November 3rd elections.
Very, very, very cool and very, very interesting. But wow, the logistics of managing that many people, you know, on a live stream, just you've got to have efficiencies down and maybe a dominatrix with a whip in the background.
Yeah, there's a 1-hour pre-show. There's a 1-hour pre-show where we meet with everybody and we walk through, because we often have brand new people on the show hosting on the panel. So we walk through all the little steps. Your lighting needs to be correct. This is how you mute. If you're going to get up and you're going to go do something, or if you have a dog in the background, make sure that you put them in another room. So we do our very best to mitigate and manage all of that in advance. But it does take time. You're right. But it's worth it. We get excellent conversation out of that show.
Yes, yes, I've watched several and have enjoyed them. And I do know what you mean by getting some pre-stuff, because it's even just doing this, small thing. I've had to, let people know things ahead of time, remind them of things during the middle of it, and it's interesting, but it's fun. It's for me, it's fun really being able to really dive into a dialogue with someone and really get to kind of the meat of the content. And there are some shows where I bring up personal anecdotes, personal relatable stories that they're talking about. We've had a lot of several mental wellness coaches on, and it's been very fulfilling for me, and it's been educational for me as well. It's been nice having guests on that come from a different background, a different perspective. I've had numerous persons of trans experience on the show, and just me learning, because just because you're gay, a gay cisgender male, doesn't mean you know everything about everything, all of the whole LGBT rainbow. And just getting down what people prefer. Don't assume, ask. Oh, do you prefer transgender male, trans man? I mean, ask. I've learned. It's so much easier than going back. Well, it's just get it right the first time. And anywho, it's been very, very enlightening, and I'm sure perhaps I'm sure there's been educational or enlightening experiences along the way as well. So you've kind of mentioned that the one of the largest or most controversial episodes was with the presidential election. Very, very interesting. Have there been any other episodes? I know you tend to, if I'm not mistaken, you tend to kind of be more the operations behind the scenes guy. But has there been other, if something pops to your mind, maybe over the last 2 years, a couple of situations or guests or topics other than the presidential one that maybe kind of stuck out to you, or that you felt, oh, that was a really great lesson, or that was a really great information, or that was a complete train wreck, without giving names?
Yes. So from a business perspective, I've learned a lot. How you navigate YouTube and a bunch of just a bunch of business growth. I've learned quite a bit. But from a personal perspective, you're right. I didn't realize how maybe inconsiderate isn't the right word, because that implies intent. But how inconsiderate I have been to members of the transgender community, for example. And I do consider myself enlightened and progressive and respectful. But I have learned so much just from the conversation that has happened on the show. The presidential election was controversial because it was such a polarizing topic, right? People are pro-Trump, or they're pro in most cases pro anything else, right? But even in that conversation, right, one of their panelists, Blair, transgender woman who was essentially weaponizing transgender in the military, and transgender service people in the military, in such an interesting way that not a way that I am an advocate for in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I completely disagree. But the ability to have that conversation and have that open forum so that everybody can not only make their own opinion, form their own opinion, but also so that you can understand what the other side is thinking. It has just been this whole everything from It's Happening Out through Q News, through Gay Town Hall, and even through our church, or through our support of the church Sunday broadcast. All of that has just created so many different platforms for open conversation, which I've just grown so much from as an individual, and that I hope people who are watching and people who are participating are also growing from. So it's every moment is a learning moment, because there's so many different opinions that are brought to the table.
Absolutely. And I know you guys have been involved with the Sunshine Cathedral for quite some time. I know the pastor there has been on your shows numerous times. And so now you're doing, the Sunday broadcast, which, as you mentioned, brings in on average, what you said, 30,000 viewers a week?
Yes, to their
Wow.
service. Yes.
That's
many
amazing.
of them live.
Wow, that's amazing. And so is that a non-denominational, or is it, I'm sorry, I'm not, make our viewers, just give them a little bit of information because they might want to tune into that as well.
Right. So they're not, technically they're part of the MCC. However, they are a Christian church, but they're completely affirming. For example, when it comes time to take communion, they say you can take communion with whatever your beliefs are or whatever your doubts are. It doesn't matter. There is no distance in love, and so they are part of a denomination. But I would set all of that, all those preconceived notions aside. And I invite everybody to just watch the service and see how they bring everybody into the fold, no matter who you are. There are Muslims who attend service. There are people of Jewish faith that attend service because they're completely open.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to check out a few of their things. I grew up evangelical, and, after having been away, and disdaining and abstaining and so forth for a while, really enjoy the Unitarian Universalist Church that affirms all world faiths in a very, very easy way. So I'd be very interested to see, what this is. And what's so great is too, is, having your news, having a little bit of camp and fun, but then also bringing an actual service, quote unquote, of a service, bringing a service to the community where no matter where they live in the US or around the world, that they're able to connect with an affirming spiritual practice through what's happening out. And then watching those, watching and participating via the Sunshine Cathedral broadcasts that you've helped enable, or you did enable. So that's a really great thing, because as you indicated, and we've said on the show here as well, so many people have had negative experiences through possibly well-intended family members who understood and interpreted the Bible or other religious teachings to be very dogmatic, and and push their family members out. And so and there's one study, I believe it was like 30 or 35% of LGBT people in the US identify as spiritual, if I'm not misquoting that study. And some would be, but they have that negative kind of background with it. So providing that is also a way to help other people not only have, a sense of belonging and space and personal growth, but, possibly healing, from their past. So wonderful, wonderful. We'll definitely have to check that out, and we'll have, of course, show note links to all of that and all of that kind of stuff. So we've talked about now kind of what your spark was, what you've been doing, and sometimes as entrepreneurs, I know it can be difficult because you are so in the weeds of the day, fighting fires, getting this done, like me, changing hosting providers, and for over a week and a half dealing with almost nothing but technical issues to get back to regular status quo even. But, what's kind of your, are there, without giving away the secret sauce and so forth, but is there kind of a plan of trajectory for maybe a 1 to 3 years from now, what you would either like to see or hope to see, or new things on the development that you're able to share?
Yeah, well, there's nothing that we're ready to share just yet. We do have a couple of things in the mix. Oh, actually, that's not true. We're going to be sending out the press release on Friday, so I can share a little preview. But we are expanding to travel. We're going to have happeningout.travel, which will be a travel show. That will be a weekly travel show. We're bringing in Anchor in South Florida. She's a super popular mainstay, Faye What. And we're bringing in David Hopkins, and they're going to be talking about all the different travel deals and trips and what's coming up next post-COVID for the LGBTQ to start planning for post-lockdown, wanting to tear your hair out from not being able to hang out with people. So we're kind of preparing for what's coming up next, and
Very cool.
And travel's going to be it. So we're launching that, and then we've got a couple of other interesting projects that are coming up that we're putting the finishing touches on to prepare for launch towards the middle of 2021.
Okay. So Happing It Out is looking to grow and expand.
Yes. So pandemic has been very interesting for us. We were a digital platform to begin with. So our viewership, our viewer loyalty grew in pandemic. So we were very fortunate in that regard. And now what we're doing is expansion is, of course, in our plans. But I am of the personal philosophy that philosophically speaking, that for every dollar we bring in, a dollar needs to go out back into the community. And that's how the idea of sponsoring and partnering with Sunshine Cathedral came into place, because first, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, but also they're a pillar in the community here in South Florida, and to make them available to. We've had fantastic stories. A kid in Tennessee found Sunshine Cathedral, and their aunt, the kid's aunt, reached out, went through his computer to try and find out why his behavior was changing, and why he was becoming happier with his general disposition in life was becoming much more positive. She found out that he was watching the service. She watched it for herself, and now she's a regular tither because she was so grateful for what the service was able to do for her nephew. And so outreach is a huge part, partnering with organizations like the World AIDS Museum, like the Pride Centers here in South Florida and across the United States, like Sunshine Cathedral. To give back and to help these 501c3s that are frankly struggling in pandemic, and that are trying not to close their doors, trying to make it over the hump of pandemic. Right. So supporting them and giving back and creating those partnerships where we can talk about stuff that's newsworthy, stuff that's topically conversational, and that we can share and promote. So that's our next big shift. In addition to growing our programming, we're also growing how we're collaborating with the community and how we'll be giving back.
Awesome.
So I'm very excited about that.
Yes, wonderful. Very, very good to hear. And yes, even pre-COVID, most LGBTQ community nonprofits struggle to make ends meet. No offense to the large organizations out there, but when you're CEO of a national, nonprofit, and your CEO makes $250,000 to $300,000 base salary, honey, you don't need my money. You get plenty from corporations. My money needs to go to nonprofits that affect my local community and causes that are particularly of interest and near and dear to my heart. Again, no offense to the large nonprofits out there. Wonderful that you exist. You do a great service to the community. But again, if your CEO makes $300,000 a year, I'm not funding their next vacation, right? I want my money to go to nonprofits who desperately need it, who probably don't even have an annual budget, what those CEOs' annual salary is. Not to name ones, but all nonprofits' taxes are open. So if you don't believe me, go look up a few. And again, it's not being negative toward them at all. I'm just being clear, that the CEO of, the thrift store, oh my gosh, it's the name is kind of difficult. The one that the sports aids right there off next to the Pride Center here in Fort Lauderdale.
Pavarello Center?
Yeah, Pavarello's. Okay, so like Pavarello's. It's a great community service. It's a thrift store. Love thrifting. And it supports people with HIV and AIDS for all of that. But I can guarantee their CEO, their probably annual whole operating budget is less than 300,000. So just really think about folks out there. Think about how you can split your money up. If you want to donate to a large national organization, great. But don't let that be everything. Maybe split it up and go, okay, well, I'll give 20% to that. And then say, all right, I want to give the rest of the 80% to something that's near and dear. Like I happen to also give to the Asylum Project, which is a national, but it's a very small, but it helps people escape countries where they can be put in prison and so forth, and help them move to countries where they can be safe and be LGBT and be open and live their lives fulfilling. So that's one that's not necessarily local, but it does affect local people, and it's just near and dear to my heart. But then focusing on your local community. And if you're in an area where you don't have, community services, maybe you're in the middle where you don't even have an affirming church, so that you can tune in here to Sunshine Cathedral. Look at organizations that actually need it. I mean, LGBT nonprofits they're in desperate and dire straits. COVID has just exacerbated that. Did I pronounce that correctly? Not masturbated it. Exacerbated it. It's made it much more difficult. So I commend you. Sorry for going off on a banter there, but I've talked about that in a couple of times, in a couple of episodes with folks, because I just don't think people realize, how nonprofits, what amazing things they do on such shoestring budgets. So again, I appreciate that you are partnering with LGBTQ community nonprofits and helping give them visibility and supporting both financially and with in-kind services. So thank you for doing that. Well, I know we are coming up here on our time, which I have locked you in for. So Darren, is there any maybe last thoughts before we sign off for today?
Well, at first, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And, I encourage everybody to, of course, follow all of our shows. It's happening out, Gay Town Hall, Queer News Tonight, Q News Tonight, and Sunshine Cathedral Sunday Service. And I also encourage everybody to go to happeningout.com and take a look at our partner page, which outlines all the different community centers and community organizations that are really going above and beyond right now. Because as you said, there are the big ones, and the big ones do fantastic work. But there's also a lot of smaller ones, and the smaller ones who are more nimble. There are political 501c3s right now who are dedicated to getting the right people into office to propel the right legislation for our community, who have turned into food banks because there are so many people who are going hungry. Right below me right now, our studio is Sunshine Cathedral's food bank as well, and they're feeding over 2,000 people a month now, people and families. So I encourage you to check them out and support where you can. And that doesn't necessarily mean money. It means volunteering. It means helping to get the word out. And sometimes it's as simple as saying to somebody in need, this is where you can find this service. That also really, really helps. So
absolutely.
Give where you can.
Give where and what
How
you can and share. So, appreciate that. And yes, we will have links to all of those locations in the show notes. So be sure to check that out, especially if you're driving. Don't go trying to write that down right now. And we appreciate you for staying tuned to this episode of OutBüro Voices. Be sure that you hit the subscribe or follow on whichever app that you are viewing or listening this to. That'll ensure that you are made aware of all future episodes. We have currently, as of this release, about 70 episodes already out there. So look up on outbureau.com. That is outburo.com for past episodes of interest. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in again. This is Dennis Velco. You have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.